Well, we're going to get started here because we have only an hour to get through all of the questions that we want to get through and save time at the end for some Q&A from the audience. But hello, everybody. Welcome to Creating Career Pathways in the Blue Economy, and I thank you all for coming. My name is Christina Urbanchik. I'm Eco-Canada's Blue Economy Project Manager. And though Eco-Canada is really well known for building and supporting the environmental workforce, and you might not have known until you came to this conference, but we have expanded into supporting the blue economy professionals as well. And it's essentially my role at Eco-Canada to provide an ocean industry perspective as we build these initiatives and programs. So it's my pleasure to be here today moderating this session as the speakers are going to be highlighting emerging career opportunities, workforce barriers, and the success stories from their different organizations. And this panel will be a combination of directed questions to the individuals as well as some general kind of open discussion questions, as well as I said, we'll save time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any pressing questions that come up, just save them till the end and we'll hopefully have some time to get around to you. So as I said, this panel is going to be emphasizing how we can all also work together to create more inclusive and sustainable career pathways in the ocean sector. So for any of you guys out there who have had even just like the smallest interest in working in the ocean sector, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our expert panelists that have traveled not only from across Canada, but also one of them even all the way from the Caribbean to be here today. So on this end, we have Sarah Thomas. Yeah, I think it's, nice, it lined up perfectly. Who's the Director of Indigenous Programs at Clear Seas Center for Responsible Marine Shipping. Followed by Sarah, we have Professor Ibrahim Ajagunna, who is the Deputy President at the Caribbean Maritime University. Maxine Westhead is the Director of the Marine Affairs Program at Dalhousie University. And that one's kind of funny because like two of my previous bosses have been graduates of that program, so I always think that's really cool. And then we have Dr. Scully, who is the Director of Workforce Development at the Pier. So as I said, we're going to start with some directed questions, which is just going to be one by one all the way through, and then we'll go through some more general ones. And so the first question is for you, Sarah. So given your role as Director of Indigenous Programs at Clear Seas, can you discuss the importance of integrating Indigenous perspectives into marine shipping and how this integration can create career opportunities within Indigenous communities?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to also just give a brief introduction to myself, which will help you understand a little bit about where my perspectives are coming from today. I'm from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, which is located in North Vancouver. We sit along the Burrard Inlet, which is right in the middle of the Port of Vancouver industry. And so my ancestors have lived there since time out of mind, which has made me realize that working in the blue economy is something that I need to do. And so I just stepped into this role about 5 years ago, which seems like 25 years ago some days, and some days it just seems like yesterday. It's like you move 2 steps forward, 1 step back every time. And so it's really good to just share my insights and perspectives along my journey of my career and my lived experience of living along the Burrard Inlet with you guys today. So what made me step into this role was there's no other Indigenous people that I've seen working in the blue economy. My dad used to work at Toklo Industries, which was 3 minutes down the street from us. And he became a foreman working there with no certifications, no schooling. He became a forklift driver. He became the foreman, mentoring his younger cousins in that area. And it was really important. It was a really important job for our community, for our young men to go work there in this industry. And as colonization happened, we now see new certifications coming in. We need all this education, this formal education, which, myself, I went out and got, but that's not where my education and my skills and training come. It really comes from learning from my ancestors, from being out on the land, on the water, and seeing the impacts that have happened in the history of my short time being here. I never got to meet my grandparents. They passed away before I was born, but they used to live and hunt and gather along the shores of the Burrard Inlet. That was our highway We used to canoe up and down there, going and collecting resources from our summer village to our winter village. And with the expansion of the ports and the marine sector, I feel it's really important that we start including this Indigenous knowledge now that we can into the expansions, into what's happening out there, because who knows the tides better than, my uncles and aunts now. I'd say my grandparents, but we've lost them. We've lost that Indigenous knowledge already, and that's sad that we weren't able to capture what they have shared with us in the past, because we come from an oral history. And so we didn't get to capture that. So now our community's starting to go out and hear from our ancestors, hear from our elders and our knowledge keepers about the erosions from, the ship wake that happens there. It's sad to see that. So we need to really include Indigenous knowledge into the work that we're doing and get more Indigenous people into this sector so that I can see more Indigenous people filling these rooms at these tables here.
Thank you very much. That was insightful. I mean, it's one of the common things that's brought up. There is a lot of Indigenous involvement in fisheries, transportation, and it would be nice to see more representation for sure. The next question we have is for Professor Ibrahim. And so, as Deputy of the Caribbean Maritime University, what initiatives have you implemented to prepare students for careers in the blue economy? And how do these initiatives address the unique challenges faced by the Caribbean region?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's very nice to be here in Calgary for the first time, but not first time in Canada. And I want to draw from my experience from the previous room, where I happen to be one of the only 3 men in that room, where they're talking about women in leadership. But I see the diversity in this room now, with a good number of men. But before I go into that question, I want to touch a little on what you have just said about the indigenous people. If we look at the different levels that is being used to promote sustainability in the past, there is none that has captured the attention of the global leaders as much as the blue economy. We spoke about ecotourism, we spoke about the Green Globe Initiative, we spoke about the Reach to Reef Initiative, but none of them has attracted people into a career like what the blue economy is doing now. And I use example from Costa Rica. Costa Rica bought into the concept of ecotourism. And when they bought into that, the first thing they did was to liaise with the indigenous people. And Costa Rica aimed to be the best ecotourism in the world, I think followed by Brazil, because that concept was embraced by the indigenous people. And the policy in Costa Rica then was that if you have a land and the land regenerates itself into a forest, you lose that land to the government. So the indigenous people understood that, and that has brought a lot of benefits to the Costa Rica people. Now, to the question of the Caribbean Maritime University, we are a 45-year-old institution in the Caribbean. We have gone through 4 phases. We were once Jamaica Maritime Institute, then Jamaica Maritime Training Institute, then Caribbean Maritime Institute, and in 2017, we became the first university in the Caribbean to focus specifically on maritime. And the journey has been very, very good since then. And I must say that all our programs are maritime focused, either both on the seaside or on the land side. Our flagship program is the marine engineering and marine transportation. And when I say marine engineering, marine transportation, maybe in your jurisdiction you call it a nautical science. And these students are prepared to work at sea. So which means even right from the onset, we understand the importance of the ocean to the economy. And we also know that even more resources to the countries of the Caribbean are more at sea than they are on the land. In the Caribbean, for example, our main economic stay is tourism. And tourism and environment do have a symbiotic relationship. Environment is the biggest asset of tourism, is the biggest asset for tourism. But let us look at what has happened over the years now. tourism starts going down, especially in Jamaica, because of remittances from especially North America. But the policy in America now is going to affect that significantly, which we now put tourism back on the map as the main economic generation for the island. Now, one of the things we have done, having recognized that life at sea, because we're talking about the 14th United Nations Development Goal, life below sea level. We recognize that because we have more access or resources underwater than we have on land, the Caribbean Maritime University, we went to develop a program in marine biotechnology. That program is about 6 years old now. It was my initiative, and it has gained traction. And I must tell you that one of the advantages of that program now is that it is going to be accredited by EcoCanada. Not only that, we also have a Bachelor of Science degree in cruise shipping and marine tourism that is equally going to be accredited by EcoCanada. And speaking to Yogi and Devant yesterday, we talked about including 2 additional programs, which is the marine engineering and marine transportation. Now, not only that, to create this career in the blue economy, we partnered with a university in Martinique to develop a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in ocean conservancy in support of the blue economy. Now we are seeking funds to develop the curriculum. The template is completed, and I know when that program is completed, it's going to be accredited also by EcoCanada. And I'm going to say to Yogi that in case if we do not find funding to write the program, because we need people to develop the curriculum, we will come back to you. And that program is being written in 2 languages, English and French. And for the French part, it will benefit Canada tremendously, if I should say. So once that program is completely developed, we also want to translate it into the 3rd language, which is Spanish. And once it is completed and fully developed, it is not going to be a franchise or selling it to another institution. We're going to make it available to every institution, to do that. So that is what we have done to create that career path for the blue economy.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are quite adaptable. Like when a new challenge comes, you can kind of quickly develop a program that will be long-lasting to kind of build up the workforce to support those changes. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you are quite correct, because that has always been my approach at the university. We had a conversation about 2 weeks ago, and somebody was saying that we do not have a large pool of market to tap into. I said, listen to me, I believe in just in time. I develop this program, deliver it to that market, and if that market is no longer existing, I'm okay, as long as I did not do that program at a loss. So I believe in just in time, develop the program, provide the needed skill or training to the people, and you move on. But before you move to the next person, another initiative we have taken is that across Jamaica, we provide training to the fisher folks. Yeah, because over time you find that because you cannot talk about sustainable development without talking about sustainable economy. And people are poor. So many a times they do overfishing, conch, fish, and different types of marine life. And what we have done is to let them understand the importance of marine life to their economy and to their life. So we do that training free of charge to all the fisher folks across Jamaica.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We are going to move on to Maxine, but I will say that it is important. Sustainability does also start with industry sometimes and that education piece, so that's really important. Maxine, we're going to move on to you. I wanted to ask if you could start by just talking a little bit about what the Marine Affairs Program is and kind of the interdisciplinary nature of it, but then after that, talk about how that interdisciplinary method is good for addressing challenges facing the blue economy and some examples where that approach has proven really effective and maybe some barriers that the program is overcoming.
Okay. All right, thank you. Amazing panel. Thank you for inviting me to be here. So I'm Max Westhead. I am director of the Marine Affairs program. I've only been there for about a year and a half. I've been teaching with the program for about 11 years now. And it's at Dalhousie. It was designed in 1986. We have over 600 graduates from 60 countries across the world. It used to be heavily funded by CEDA and very internationally focused for mid-career professionals, but it's now kind of evolved over time to be dedicated to those just coming out of their undergrad looking for a career in marine management. Most of our graduates go on to careers with the public sector, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Transport Canada, and also the ENGO sector, because many of them are very passionate about marine conservation and sustainability. It is an interdisciplinary program, and before I arrived as director, I spent 26 years with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, largely working on marine protected areas, finding areas, designing them, designating them, managing them, and monitoring them. And also, I spent 5 years with the Marine Spatial Planning program as well. So, and it's funny because every so often I would be like, what am I really qualified to do out there? What are the other jobs available to me? And I just felt like I was such a generalist. But in fact, that's exactly what we need in the marine environment. So imagine 99.99% of marine life you can't see unless you're under the water or have a remote camera or you're scuba diving or you have row posts, right, which costs $1 bajillion a day. And you also need a vessel to get out there. Like, it's very expensive, and we still know so little about the ocean. And a lot of what we will need to do as, a blue economy keeps driving forward with, for example, offshore wind just around the corner in Nova Scotia, we need to focus on impacts, and we need to make sure that we do things sustainably, protect species at risk, and at the same time manage coexistence with a very active fishery and shipping routes. So it's all about coexistence, and in fact, when you're trying to assess an impact, for example, of say what an offshore wind foundation would have on the marine environment, you have oceanography, you have marine biology and subspecialties within that, you have ocean physics, you have seabed geology. So you have all of these disciplines, and as a manager, in my role with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, I needed to be able to synthesize and analyze and bring together lots of data. So I felt like I was very superficially, have big breadth, but not necessarily a lot of depth. And I think that is an interdisciplinary, and yes, you can certainly specialize. But yeah, so interdisciplinary is really key, and our program curriculum is designed. We have social scientists, we have natural scientists, and the curriculum also has an internship component. And so one of the key elements of the program is a summer internship, which often is a stepping stone to their career. So those co-op programs, internship programs, and the working experience that you get while you're taking the degree is really, really important.
This is also another one of those overlap things where at my last job I had a few of your co-ops like 2 years in a row coming and working with my research team. So I've seen it in action, and I know where they went after that, the jobs that they moved on to. So yeah, definitely very important. The last question we have that's like a direct question before we move into some more general ones is for Sherry. And so Sherry is the Director of Workforce Development at the Pier. And so if you could just again speak to what the Pier is and what it's all about, and then as well talk about the strategies that you found effective in fostering innovation and entrepreneurship in the ocean tech sector, as well as how those strategies translate into viable career pathways.
Okay, great. That's a lot. So the Pier is the innovation arm of the Halifax Port Authority. The port set this up as a way of pulling together an ecosystem of innovators to solve really complex problems in maritime transportation, logistics, and supply chain. and with an eye really towards optimizing resources and infrastructure there, and then also for focusing on sustainability and decarbonization of the industry. The global maritime transportation industry, it contributes about 3% of carbon emissions. And so a focus on decarbonization can have huge global impact. So in terms of technology, as I mentioned, we have a lot of different innovators there. We work with the universities as well. Maxine's department and I, we've done some industry projects. We've taken on some interns as well, who work to sort of combine the science with the technology that is designed to observe, study, and then also hopefully help to mitigate some of the damage done to the environments around us. In terms of pathways, so I think one of the things I was going to talk about was some of the research. Did you want that now? Okay, great. So in my role, I conduct primary research. I also develop programs in collaboration with the universities and colleges, and I work with industry and government as well. It's kind of a broad role. And some of the primary research that I do also through my own private consulting practice is I've worked with the Ocean Supercluster and through the peer, and developed recently some reports, one that's focused on green skills for a net zero economy. And that was actually part of a collaboration with the Business Higher Education Roundtable and Future Skills Center. And then I've also done another one looking at student, or actually perceptions of young professionals regarding the ocean industry. And so some of the things that we observed, we want to understand, what were their perceptions of the careers, what drove those perceptions, what was their inclination towards careers in the industry, and the motivation behind that. And what we see is much more ocean positive behaviors, much more optimism around careers and access points into the industry. We see in terms of what drives young people's decisions, and as I said, when we're looking at young people's 18 to 35 in this particular study. So drivers are, number one, are security, job security, and financial stability, which is probably not a surprise given the economic situation, especially with young professionals. And the second is doing a job that is particularly meaningful for themselves. And the third, actually, from this whole study was working in a role that contributes to sustainability and the ecosystems around us. When we look at sustainability in industry, it really is a balance of economics, of environment, and of social impact as well, and well-being. People have talked about triple bottom line for a very long time, and that wasn't always equally weighted, and now it is much more equally weighted in how we build strategies and how we actually implement them. The studies also reflected on or gained insights into high-value careers for a net zero economy within the sustainable blue economy. I should mention I've been working specifically in this industry for about 12 years now. And some of the observations from this study were that there are some, but not a lot of purely green roles or skills, that most of the skills actually relate to traditional foundational knowledge and skill areas that are adapted to green initiatives and green roles. That means that foundation skills still remain hugely important, but then layering upon that more understanding, knowledge holding, and skill development, a lot of that being technical and digital skills that are related to that particular role. So Maxine's comment about being a generalist, some of the things that industry highlighted was that they are looking for people with foundational expertise and experience, but they're also looking for a broader range of roles and for more generalist abilities so that they can adapt what they have learned to cross-disciplinary teams and apply that knowledge in a much more sort of collaborative way.
Yeah, that's really great insight. I love that report. I've shared it at multiple presentations with students just to be like, if you feel this way, so does a whole bunch of other people in Canada. facing those kind of thoughts about whether they want to enter the ocean sector. And I also remember thinking those things and feeling those things when I was deciding whether I wanted to work in the blue economy. So I think next, I'm not sure how much time we have because I don't actually have a clock up here, but I would love to get through one or two general questions for like the whole panel. So I think the one that we're going to start with is around collaboration, since that's really important to the industry. And the question that I really wanted to talk about was how educational institutions and industry stakeholders, as well as like policymakers, can collaborate and work together to like make sure that the workforce is adequately prepared for the growth that's coming, as well as the demands that are currently there in the blue economy.
If you want me to go first, the International Maritime Organization has oversight for all maritime related issues globally. And in the Caribbean, for example, recently there was a body that was created called DEMA, that is Director and Heads of Maritime Administration. And we have formed a cluster where we meet once every year. And the essence of this is to look at issues that are affecting the maritime sector in the Caribbean. And at the last DEMA meeting, I made a presentation where I asked for IMO to support us financially so that we can have a conglomerate of all maritime-related institutions and organizations in the Caribbean work together to conduct research relating to decarbonization that you spoke about earlier on, and how to address the issue of litters, maritime litters, as well as one of the biggest problems that is affecting the Caribbean now is the seaweed, sargassum. Like I said earlier on, the economy that is dependent on tourism and the beach fronts cannot be accessed because of sargassum. It's a serious issue. So that initiative is, I'm taking it back to the next DEMA for approval. I have made contact with all the maritime-related organizations, and they bought into this initiative 100%. Now, in terms of the industry aspect of this collaboration, we recently submitted a proposal to Interreg Caraíbe, which is a European Union body financing projects in the Caribbean. And I must say that we were successful in submitting that bid, and it was approved. And fund is already been made available to carry out that research. And what is this research all about is to reduce the carbon footprint in the Caribbean. What we are doing now is we are starting to do our research on building a rotor that we mount on the vessel, because Caribbean water is very breezy, and to see how the rotor which will propel the vessel will reduce the amount of fuel consumption. And we believe that if this is successfully done, it will reduce the consumption by probably 10 to 30% in the first instance. And then as the process continues, we will increase the reduction in the fuel consumption. However, we do have a problem. Vessels sail to make money. They don't sit at the port to make money. Now, we are looking for ship owners that will allow us probably leave the vessel at our dry dock, maybe for 1 month, for us to be able to mount the rotor, and then we experiment with it. That research is going to be done at the Caribbean Maritime University, and the research is going to be done by our students. That collaboration is with Farwind, which is out of France. So we try, just like we are doing with Eco Canada now, we also try such a collaboration, arrangement, and a partnership with other industry and educational institutions. Another one is that...
We just are a little short on time, so I want to let the other panelists have a chance to answer this question. So whoever, Maxine?
I wouldn't mind, yeah, just briefly. We have constant collaboration at the Marine Affairs program, both the faculty and the Marine Management program itself. The relationships that we've built with organizations like the Peer and the federal government, and just to make sure curriculum and research is aligned, so it's relevant. I'm also working to create a new course-based master's program for fisheries stock assessment biologists, and we're also transforming the marine affairs program into an online certificate program to reach those, professionals around the world to that maybe want to upskill, maybe mid-career professionals, or somebody that wants a little bit more expertise in a certain topic. So with both of those initiatives, we've been, working with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, sending out surveys to marine affairs graduates, like would you be interested in a certificate program to upskill or renew your skills, and just really there's so many opportunities for alignment. And I think updating curriculum is important. I think sometimes courses just get taught and taught and taught until they're just so irrelevant, and then they get revitalized. I think regular communication with whoever it is in the field that needs those graduates is really, really key.
And if I could just add on to that, so that's some of the work that I do, as well as through my research, then translating that back into ways that curriculum can be adapted. So some other collaborations that we do, as I mentioned, with the universities is providing industry projects so that students are working on real, authentic challenges that are that industry is actually having dialogues around at the time. Part of that is around building social license, around building knowledge, and also just around building awareness of what's happening around them. An example of that would be some of the offshore wind and hydrogen projects that are happening in Nova Scotia, and writing case studies, providing case studies for students to take a look at those. Also doing research where we have partnerships with the federal government through funding through NSERC and SSHRC, through MyTax, and then also through partnering industry with young researchers so that they are all involved in this together. And then through a broader work integrated learning program that, as I mentioned, is funded through Business Higher Education Roundtable, so that we're providing work experience for young people so that they are entering the industry with some good work experience, with broader knowledge about it. And then also seeing that you don't need to necessarily come from a STEM background. You can enter the industry through different pathways. One of the other key findings from that research that I did was that STEM careers, STEM disciplines are only one part of the pathway, and that we're actually looking for new talent from all disciplines, because they all play a role. And one example of that would be partnerships with the Mount University, where we're doing a study on communications for building social license around initiatives like hydrogen and offshore wind, and a research with Acadia University looking at the economics of sustainability and how we do rewrite basically formulas for economics, so that we are considering the triple bottom lines. We are considering the balance of economics, environment, and social well-being.
Sarah, do you have something to add?
I do, actually, and I'll just be really quick on this one because collaboration is key. We've all heard of that before. But before you begin to collaborate, what do you need to do first? You need to educate yourself on whose Indigenous territory you're on. I think that's really important. Industry is surrounded by many different communities, and it's education for me is key as well. I mean, I'm a guest in Treaty 7 territory here today in Calgary, so it's an honor for me to be able to share my truth and my history and my lived experience here in Calgary today. And the other thing is communication. Just communicate with the communities what you're doing, learn what they're doing. There's no point in reinventing the wheel out there when somebody maybe on the East Coast is already doing something that we can develop over here on the West Coast. That's where my role as Director of Indigenous Programs for Clear Seas comes in, is I'm sharing every day what's happening with other communities and saying, hey, if I don't have that knowledge to share, I have somebody in my back pocket or up my sleeve that can connect with you to start that collaboration process.
Yeah, that's agreed. I second everything you just said. So we have time for like one last really quick, if you guys could just give like super snappy answers before we move to some questions from the audience. And this one's a bit of a curveball. It wasn't on the pre-approved list of questions. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody considering entering the ocean sector or transferring from another sector into the ocean sector, what would that piece of advice be? I can give you time to think about it for a second.
You think I'd have the answer to this one, being that I actually have a program called the Indigenous Marine Career Advancement Program. And like I mentioned, communication and education of just where you want to work is at. But really, you know, we're all passionate about what we do here, and so there's not much you can really tell somebody, because if they want to work in the ocean sector, they're going to come, and it's going to be from the heart. And I think that's where my career has led me, is that it's not only a job for me now, it's a career. So if you want to make a long-lasting career, just build up that network. I think having a really strong network is good, and hopefully I can connect with some of you guys later to continue to build my network as well.
I have too many answers, but I'm going to try and keep it to one and make it snappy if I possibly can. I guess my advice would be to not dismiss your skills if you happen to be coming from a different industry or without a STEM background. There are huge opportunities for people to enter via different pathways. One of the things that employers need to get better at, though, is recognizing those transferable skills and credentials that might be called something else in a different industry. Our traditional hiring and recruitment strategies don't really allow a lot of room for that, and so we're missing out on key talent because of that.
If I should say, we do mentorship at the point of entry. And this is very important because many of the students or candidates coming to us, they do not have much knowledge about that industry that they want to enter. And when you interview them, you have conversation with them, you know where their headspace is. Then you are able to recommend, because most of the programs are competency-based programs. So you're able to recommend, oh, you should go into marine biology, you should go into navigation, you should go into cybersecurity and the like, rather than to leave them halfway before thinking of changing their career path.
Yeah, I would say the network is so important. I think every different job that I've ended up in is because of a conversation. I mean, I applied for my internship in 1998, and I literally worked in the same office for 26 years, which leads me to the next point. I stayed there because I was so passionate about the work. Like, being able to say I made marine protected areas is something only a few people in Canada can say. And I feel like I'm leaving the world in a better place because of my work. So I'm very proud of that. So follow your heart, make sure you're passionate about what it is, but then build the network, start talking to people, and it's amazing what happens when you just put what it is you want out there to others, and things will find you.
Yes, thank you for that. We're going to move, if there's questions in, oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
do you want 2 mics?
Oh, I'm going to run around and, give the mic to people. Is there anyone who has any questions? We have one. Oh, we have a couple. Okay, let's start with the one in the back.
Here I go. Run. It's a marathon.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you so much for that delightful session on the blue economy. I'd say definitely opened my eyes. So a little bit of background about me. I'm an environmental scientist. I focus on the soil and groundwater sampling. I wanted to really come here just to see what exciting career pathways, you talented folks are advocating for, and I gotta say, this is something I definitely would like to see myself 5-10 years from now, hopefully sooner, if you would be pleased to connect with me and mentor me. One of my questions I'd like to ask you is, it's very important to take care of our ecosystem, especially the oceans, right? And you do come from diverse geographic locations. One of my questions I'd like to ask you, this is to do with travel and tourism. I'm sure you're all familiar with cruise lines. They have ways and opportunities to help us connect to, the lands of the oceans and waters. And as much as I love cruises, I do want to be cognizant and be aware of the detrimental, dire consequences that's happening in the ocean. And if there's anything, I would like to do in the future is to come up with innovative ideas to make sure that the oceans are protected first, right? So having said that, with your background, this is a panel for really all four of you. I would love to hear what tips, advice would you give to travel tourism, because they are currently advocating for the environment, but I wonder, is there any more specific role or concepts that they need to refine, make it better to, walk the walk and talk the talk based on their actions? So I would love to hear your opinion in this matter.
He who blows the pipe controls the tune. The Caribbean, for example, receives 45% of cruise deployment globally. We are happy, but at the same time, we receive 45% of the waste generated. The unfortunate thing is this: a cruise vessel is a hotel on water that can move from place to place. Now, the penalty for violation in the Caribbean is very, very light. So the cruise vessels or cruise owners can do whatever they like in the Caribbean water. And if we say we are putting this restriction on them, they move their vessels somewhere else. There was an example, there was a situation in the Caribbean where the Caribbean Tourism Organization tried to negotiate a standard head tax for all the islands. The cruise liners say, no, we want to negotiate with individual islands. St. Lucia aligned with the Caribbean Tourism Organization for that standards head rate. The cruise ships stopped going to St. Lucia. And this is a place where tourism is the primary economic activity in that country. So it has been a discussion for the longest time. And the irony of it is that less than 5% of Caribbeans are employed on these cruise vessels. So it is a disadvantage to us. And we do not even have the advantage of even cruising ourselves within the Caribbean. If I want to take a cruise, I have to fly to Florida, to cruise to Jamaica. Yes, to cruise to Aruba, to cruise to other Caribbean islands. So it is an issue that we have not been able to address. Bush Stewards wanted to introduce a cruise business in the Caribbean. He couldn't do it because you cannot compete. So there we talk about the power relations. So the cruise lines do have the power, and we are toothless. And the little that they are bringing to us, we are accepting it in good faith. And look at another scenario in the Caribbean. All the land-based or the shore-based activities are sold on the vessel. They sold an attraction to you for $100, but they pay the destination, the attraction, $20. So how do you manage with that? The Ministry of Tourism created different programs to stop issue of harassment and crime. The passengers come to your shore, they remain on board. So government is the one that is benefiting from this and not the local community. So it's a serious issue to address in the Caribbean.
I'd like to add something to that as well. And I think the ecotourism route is another area to focus on. And consumers can be encouraging cruise lines to adopt more sustainable practices. The Port of Halifax receives about 205 vessels per year, probably nothing compared to the Caribbean, but still that's a lot, generates a lot of economic benefit, but as you mentioned, it can have a huge impact on the environment around us. But at the same time, we are starting to see a shift in the vessels themselves. So we have received a few times now a few Norwegian vessels that are hybrid. We are starting to see that trend towards these hybrid vessels that can displace between 30 and 80% of diesel, depending on the size of the vessel. And I think consumers can vote with their dollars by choosing to work with cruise lines that have a stronger sustainability focus, encourage them to be adopting cleaner technologies, cleaner fuels. And just last week, I was mentioning to someone else that the first cargo vessel that is powered by wind set sail. And so we are seeing a lot of change. Are people willing to get on a vessel that's going to travel more slowly, that maybe won't reach as many ports, so that they can enjoy an experience on a clean vessel? Again, this is about shifting paradigms and about shifting what consumers are looking for.
Hi, thank you. I have two questions. The first is, what are the opportunities for prairie or other landlocked provinces to contribute to the blue economy? And my other question is more on the international side. How can Canada be a good partner in building the capacity of other blue economies around the world, such as in developing countries such as Kenya?
Do I take the last question first? We have Eco Canada. Yes, we have Eco Canada, and Yogi and the team will be attending a conference in Jamaica next week, and I think you need to emphasize this when you get to that conference. So that is one way. The question you raised earlier on about collaboration, because we are trying to extend beyond the Caribbean to other parts of the world. We have a partnership with institutions in China, in Nigeria, in Europe, France mainland, and in fact, we should be talking about Dalhousie, because your vice president came to us 2 years ago, and I've been trying to get him to sign the MOU, but he wouldn't sign it. Please tell him to sign that MOU. We want that a partnership. So this is the way by which we can move around the world and learn from your good practice. In fact, Eco Canada, I want to say that that new program that we are developing, the proposal is for €1 million. If we get through with that, you are our first partner to write that curriculum.
And I'll share two quick examples as well. We're also partnering, or some of our peer members, with projects in Nigeria as well for technology transfer and knowledge transfer. And then the port actually has an MOU with Port of Hamburg to create what's called a green corridor, so that we are focusing on sustainability in our own ports, and then also with a corridor in between. And that is done through incentives. We call them port incentives, so that we are incentivizing vessels and vessel companies to adopt cleaner practices, so that they receive lower call prices or call fees. And these initiatives, they're incredible, about really motivating and inspiring funding for the projects themselves, and then inducing all along the whole supply chain to participate in a green corridor.
Just very briefly, I think ocean education is important, and I think that can be done anywhere, like inspiring kids and high school students to learn about the ocean, even though they probably haven't seen it yet, maybe. Canada does not identify as an ocean nation, and I always struggle with that. And I blame it on the coldness of our waters, and that it's too cold to frolic in Canadian oceans. But I wish that we had more education and more appreciation nationally about Canada as an ocean nation.
I don't think anyone addressed the very first question there around landlocked areas. And I will say, actually, a lot of the companies that actually work at the Cove and at the pier in Halifax are actually based in the prairies in landlocked areas. I won't say the majority of them, but a lot of them. And when we look at the skills that are needed, they are being addressed by colleges and universities in landlocked areas, because we can invite a much broader range of skills for the industry, and also because the reality is you don't need to live on near the ocean actually to participate in the industry, and we're seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, I did actually. I was just about to answer that question. All of our resources are shipped in to Canada. So even if you're landlocked, we have 3 coasts along our beautiful country here. So some of our interns have been doing internship projects in the prairies. And one of them is in Winnipeg in the Red Seal River watershed. And we've managed to connect that to marine shipping funding of some source, because all resources are being shipped out. So I think it's really important that we all understand what Canada, what our supply chain is, what we're shipping out, what we're receiving in, how can we keep more of that here in Canada for us without having to send it out and then bring it back into Canada. So I think that's really important just to share as Canadians across Canada, especially with our lovely politics that's been happening right now in the world. And then just internationally, I mean, for myself, we've been working with like New Zealand and the oceanic countries down there. I've been invited to go speak at in Maui actually, but it's just a matter of funding. Who's gonna give us our little not-for-profit funding for me to go enjoy Maui? I'm still working on that, by the way. So if any of you guys have funding that you need to get rid of before the end of March, I'll happily
Eco
take
Canada.
Yeah. But yeah, there's like great conferences like Impact 5, which was just a big eye-opener for me. It was in Vancouver last year, and I think just making those connections again, I think those, like I mentioned before, and I'll say it over and over again, that network's super important to have, and not just here in Canada, but also internationally. And there goes my phone, which means it must be done.
So we pretty much only have time for one more question before I'm going to wrap it up. So if anybody had questions that didn't get answered, I'm just going to put a shameless plug in here that if you have any about Eco Canada and what we're doing in the blue economy, you can come and check out our booth that's in the exhibition hall. We also have another booth that's working on advancing women to ocean leadership roles. That there's a booth there too that you can kind of see about that project. But also I invite you to ask these experts those questions as well after the session, but I just want to be mindful of time. We only have one more question worth of time left, so.
Very happy to hear the shout out for the Seal River Watershed Alliance. Yes. And I will remind folks that the province of Manitoba has a port on Hudson Bay, which is owned and operated by Arctic Gateway Group, which is itself Indigenous led. So there's some pretty exciting things going on up there. Nistanan project, which a lot of folks were calling crazy up until a few weeks ago when even crazier things started to happen. Doesn't look quite so crazy anymore, but still extremely challenging idea. But this links to the question that I have for the group. I have yet to hear a discussion of the blue economy that mentions the Arctic. What is the involvement of Arctic, or the place of the Arctic in blue economy discussions?
I can start this one. Because I'm based in BC, it's really hard to, well, I shouldn't say it's really hard to. I've been trying to build those relationships up there, and with the Inuit, they have their own laws and their own government systems up there. So I'm still educating myself on what's happening there. I've built some really good relationships, and I will be expanding our program up there. We had one intern from Tuk that did a internship with us through the Yukon University, and so we are eventually getting there. But again, for me, it's about those really truly meaningful relationships. So I'm still educating myself on how I can support them while learning about how what they're doing up there can also share with other Indigenous communities on our other 2 coasts.
And I had the privilege for the last 2 summers of going on the Polar Prince. which is an Indigenous-owned vessel. It's a former Coast Guard and icebreaker. And we go up to the Arctic. This past summer, we set sail from Iqaluit. And we bring students on board along with researchers, and introducing students to technologies and to research that's happening up there, talking about industry as well, and with the intention of introducing students from the area to industry, to programs, and then actually bringing the education there as well, so that it's not perceived that you need to leave the north in order to be involved in the industry, then in fact an industry can be established there. Some of the technology brought in, but also empowering people from those communities to actually participate in the industry on their own and develop their own businesses.
I also just want to add to that I actually did that program when I was 15, I would have been 17. Yeah, 17, right before I was about to go into university, and that was one of the deciding factors, that trip, that made me realize I wanted to work in the ocean sector, and I learned everything I know about Northern Canada is from that trip pretty much, so it was definitely very impactful and like a great program, so yeah, anyways.
I think I would just add that, Canada's committed to 30% of our ocean protected by 2030, and we have a long way to go. And the Arctic is there's more and more marine protected areas being established in the Arctic. And what I hope for is a conservation economy. What I hope for is sustainable resource use, not a boom and bust, and very a cautious approach to development as we move forward.
Well, that's pretty much all the time we have left in this session, and I just want to say thank you all for coming to the session. If we could give our speakers a round of applause. And as I said, I'm sure they're all open to having you come up and ask any questions that didn't get answered, and definitely come by our booth if you want to learn about our newest designation. The Sustainable Blue Economy Professional is a new initiative that's a sister designation to the Environmental Professional. If you don't already know about that, just come by and you can speak to either Liz or I about that designation and what that program is. And yeah, and so thank you everyone. Thank you guys especially for coming all the way here and for your insights and your perspectives. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Can we have a group picture? Yeah.